What's going on Instagram? So I'm doing Instagram live. I love Q&A, and it's not because I have the answers, but I do have a thinking process that I think is valuable. I've been told is valuable by a lot of people. You know, one of the things I'm going to be doing at Paradox a lot is just be present for teenagers to ask me questions, you know, and it can be questions about all kinds of stuff. You know, over the years, I have substituted a lot, you know, at different schools. I've been at small schools, mostly. And when a teacher calls out, then I, fill in. I love substituting like within my school where people kind of know me and I kind of know the kids. Substitute teaching is hard because there's no like relationship element. But anyway, I've covered like all kinds of classes. I've covered even like religious classes. I've covered art classes. I've covered, science and everything like that. And again, I'm not an expert in those areas, but when they have questions, I can kind of think my way through it and lead them down somewhere that's valuable. So I'm gonna get into the questions. For those of you that are gonna be watching live, you can ask questions as well. We'd love that. And let's go. Let's see what people have. What challenges might occur the more you try and remain neutral to appeal to all audiences? I don't think I try to appeal to all audiences, to be honest. I know that I'm not going to be, everyone's cup of tea. As, Paradox is not going to be for everybody. I think what I try to do is I try to recognize all audiences have a perspective, but I'm not going to appeal to them. I just posted something recently that was critical of conservatives. And even though I have, a slightly more conservative leaning audience, I knew that would, upset them. So I'm not putting it out there to appeal to them. I'm trying to appeal to people. But I think that, if you break this down into like a relationship issue, I do subscribe to the idea of a friend to all is a friend to none. Because you're going to have loyalties and there's going to be a hierarchy of loyalties that come up. And what do you do when two friends go at each other? Then what do you do? Oh, hey, what's going on? I think that remaining neutral is also a problem for things that matter. I would never remain neutral on things that I believe are very, very important, which is why I've spoken out against things that I believe to be very serious, even though it was definitely at an expense, speaking out against things within like anti-racism, wokeness or whatever, speaking out against some of the transgender ideology and things like that. I mean, there are risks to those kinds of things. Where's the donation button? I don't have a donation button. I do have a Patreon somewhere, but I'm very hesitant to actually ask for contributions, but maybe I'll put the Patreon out there just in case people do want to. But this is just education, it's the educator in me, the person who's searching for truth and stuff like that. But the challenge would be trying to acknowledge the perspectives of other people, but that's not going to be my attempt to appeal to audiences. But it's definitely challenging to try and see people that strongly disagree, or that people who have what I think are very dangerous ideologies, trying to see like the good in them is not always easy to do. Okay. How do you navigate teaching through concepts in a public school setting versus facing backlash for not being woke? Oh man. I'm not in a public school anymore as part of it. I had to leave right around when the culture wars were starting to ramp up. Like the middle of the 2010s. And I knew that if I was going to speak out, that I would have gotten fired. I know that. So I had to go somewhere where I could speak out, essentially. What do I want to see change in this education system that we realize takes away a child's true autonomy? I want to see a lot changed. I want to see more options. Absolutely, there needs to be more options when it comes to education. There needs to be, I had Corey DeAngelis in the podcast, and he's big in like the school choice movement. And he's like, imagine if you can only go to the grocery store that's like one grocery store and it's in like your neighborhood and that's it. When I taught in East LA, really tough neighborhood. There weren't a lot of groceries. That's what they call food deserts. So the families that were really health conscious, if they could, they would drive, 15, 20 minutes down to a nicer area to go to Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or something like that and then bring the groceries back. Which is what people do with schools, right? They travel to drop off the kid, or they lie about their address or something like that. But this idea that you have to go to the grocery store that's in your neighborhood, that's funded by the tax dollars of that neighborhood, especially a lower income neighborhood, that's a problem. And so I think that there needs to be more choice. I think that there really needs to be an emphasis on getting rid of ideologies and promoting critical thinking and civil discourse and all the stuff that I'm working on, the stuff that I'm doing with Paradox. I mean, that's why I'm doing it, is like this be the change you wish to see in the world type of mentality that I strongly adhere to. Okay. I saw someone in here was a Jiu Jitsu black belt. What are my go-to Jiu Jitsu techniques? I don't train as much as I would like to, but I usually get in like 2 or 3 days a week now. But I went months, sometimes years without training at all. My go-to Jiu Jitsu technique is Darce choke, which is like a head arm choke where I slip in through like the under the armpit and out through the neck, and then because I have long arms, and I've been looking for it from a whole bunch of places, and I got the Rotolo brothers. Darce from anywhere stuff. So that's my go-to. That's the only one that I seem to catch regularly on guys that are much better than me. So that's kind of my one trick pony when it comes to that. Yeah, Wicked Sailor. Let's go. I can nerd out. I have hit a couple of buggy chokes too, because Rene Souza, who's a great friend of mine, he was the first guy to hit it at black belt in no-gi worlds and stuff like that. So he taught me the buggy. I'm kind of flexible too. I don't know. People are gonna be like, "Oh, I'm getting out of here with all this nerdy BJJ talk," but I could nerd out on that stuff all day. What challenges might occur the more you try and remain neutral? Oh, I already answered that one. Sorry. Here we go. What's this one? Can you talk about how you were contacted not to talk or share the CRT discussion? Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, the guy who hosted that. Alfred Brooks, Shivy Brooks, actually DM me because I posted that this morning. I posted another clip of that this morning. Didn't say take it down, but I know he probably doesn't like it out there. Which I invited him to think about that, because here's for me, this is live. I could say something, do something that's really terrible, but I want it to be out there because it'd be a learning opportunity about how I'm wrong. If I say something that's like off, then if it goes out there and I'm embarrassed, that is like, boom, I got to change. I got to adopt something new. And I think that's really valuable. Everything I put out there, every Instagram post, I either stand by still, or I could go into a lot of detail about how I've learned from that mistake. I love the permanentness of the internet. Now, this is where I'm at now. Maybe I won't in the future, but I think that it's important that if you put something out there, not to keep it a secret. I think lack of transparency is why I became like lumped in with like the anti-woke crowd, is because when Coleman Hughes reached out to Ibram Kendi and said, let's have a conversation and we'll donate the proceeds to the United Negro College Fund, and Ibram Kendi said no. Ibram Kendi, you lost. Your ideas, you will not put them up against someone else who disagrees with you. That is against everything that America stands for. It's against the Enlightenment principles that were founded on, and I just don't. It's against intellectual pursuits of truth. So I don't want to put it all out there. But how did I get contacted? It's basically through DMs of saying, take that down. It's my intellectual property, and threatened lawsuits and stuff like that. At which point, I was on the live too, and it was kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, if you want to sue me, that's fine, because I do think that it'd be more of the Streisand effect. If you don't know what the Streisand effect is, it was a real estate company or something like that was taking surveying photos, like a magazine or something like that, or a pamphlet, and they got Barbara Streisand's house in it, and she didn't want her house in this pamphlet, so she sued the real estate company. No one would have looked at a real estate pamphlet, but the lawsuit became public, and then everyone said, well, now I want to see it. It's kind of like if AOC, suppose there's like an AI version of like a sex tape of her or something like that. I honestly don't know anything about that, but like I heard something along those lines, and her saying, you got to take down that AI tape or whatever it is, video, makes a lot of people around the world go, well, now I want to see it. I didn't even know about it, but now I want to see it. So I wasn't scared of a lawsuit. And I also deeply believe that conversation between me, Shivy, Wheeze, and Dr. Kate is extremely important. I think it's extremely important. Wheeze is still making a lot of money as a consultant for these critical social justice ideas. Shivy's still teaching. He's on a school board in Atlanta. And Dr. Kate is a dean at an education college at a prestigious university. So these people are in powerful positions in education, not even saying that they're bad. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we should know what they think. If they are guiding the education system, we should know what they think. That should not be censored. So I think it's extremely important to put it out there. Wheeze and Kate have blocked me. And Shivy always has an open invitation to come on my podcast or something like that. And I would be as fair to him as I am to anybody, or try to be to anybody. Because I'm so against censorship, and I believe in transparency being very, very important thing. Let's see. So the whole CRT discussion was so intellectually dishonest on their part. I think it's ideological capture. I do. I think it's the thing about how ideologies bind and blind you. I think that they're just really, really lost. I do. Let's see. Let's see. What's this one? Bad take on the Harrison versus Colin. Okay, so all right, let me address this, because that was my post yesterday about Harrison Butker and comparing it to the freedom of speech that other athletes like LeBron and Colin Kaepernick were doing. I absolutely understand the differences. I do. I'm a fairly astute guy. I'm putting this stuff out there. I understand the differences. I also, if you've been following my content, you could probably assume that I am more on the side of Harrison Butker, saying being a housewife and a homemaker is extremely rewarding, and you haven't been told that, or saying things. I don't know about some of the IVF stuff and things like that, but at the end of the day, I align more with Harrison Butker personally than I do what LeBron is saying, what Colin Kaepernick is saying. But what I was attempting to point out, and clearly failed because it was unclear to a lot of people who follow me and stuff like that. But what I was trying to point out is that if you support Harrison Butker saying what he said, but don't believe that Colin Kaepernick or LeBron have the right to say what they say because they're athletes, shut up and dribble kind of thing. No one wants to hear your thoughts of systemic racism, LeBron. Just go out and play your sport. Then why not say that kind of thing to Harrison Butker? If no one wants your opinion about gender roles, just go out and kick the football. That's kind of what I was trying to point out. I understand the context of where it was done. I understand, I obviously have my own leanings toward what I believe and what I don't. But I think it's important just to challenge the ideological capture of people. So I agree with you that it might be, it might have been sloppy in the way that I was doing it, but I attempted to bring that to light. And then I did a poll afterwards of the people who are critical of me in this comparison. How many of you are right-leaning? And it was overwhelmingly. It was over 90% of the people who are critical of that comparison were from the political right of the aisle. So it does align with what I'm saying, because can you view criticisms of your side accurately? So I think that there's something to that. And even if you want to look at all the ways that my comparison is wrong, you'll find them. But that's confirmation bias. And I'd say over and over again that we should not be seeking confirmation bias when we're trying to become serious thinkers. What we should be looking for is seeking disconfirmation. Instead of going oh my gosh, Will's so wrong on this take. It's this. Go, how could Will be right on this? Not even that I am right. It's trying to use me as not the person with all the answers. It's use me as someone who's going to, as Socrates says, spark thought. So you can go, is there a double standard that I'm holding? Maybe not in this exact situation, but is there a double standard that I hold for people who are more on the conservative side than for people who are more on the liberal side, or vice versa? That's what I'm trying to prompt out of people, and maybe I did it in a slight way, and I apologize, but that was the attempt that I was trying to make with that post. Am I feeling stressed and anxious about the 2024 presidential election like most people? No, I wouldn't say stressed and anxious. No, I have like real problems, I guess. It's like a terrible way to put it, not minimizing people, but like, no, I wouldn't say stressed and anxious. But I do have concerns. I don't think it's good. I think that our country is headed somewhere really, really bad. But I am curious about where it's going to go. I'll probably be covering a lot and trying to be as neutral as possible because I'm fairly objective when it comes to Trump and Biden, I think. I'm probably more objective to Trump than most people. I don't know if I'm more objective to Biden. I think that it's so hard to read President Biden because I don't think that he's in charge. I don't think that he's running things. I think that kind of stuff is fairly clear, at least to me. I don't think that he's mentally sharp. He's not very spry. So it's very hard to read him. I just think that it's crazy that these are our two choices. I think most people would agree with that. I think it's like 70% of the population doesn't want Trump and Biden again. So it's like, what is this? Why must wives be led by husbands logically? Are women less capable to you? Are women less capable of what? Are women less capable of picking up rocks? Sorry. Oh, am I cutting it out? Oh. Are women less capable of empathy shown towards the dispossessed or the needy? No. So I think that we have to be careful of these like blanket statements. Why must wives be led by the husbands? Being led is a double-edged sword because so much is put on like, the husbands are leading the wives and the husbands are the head of the household and stuff like that. But they're also the ones that went down with the Titanic. They also are the one who the real burden is on. Like if the house, the mortgage hasn't been paid and you're going to lose your house and your kids are going to be homeless, that falls on the man too. Heavy lies the crown. So it's not just a luxury to be the leader of a household. There's a tremendous burden and a tremendous responsibility on there. The wars are fought by men, mostly, so I don't think it's as simple as something as, wives are subservient to the men and therefore, the men are like better than the wives or men are better than women or anything like that. I don't think that's the way to view it at all. I think that it's much more about when push comes to shove, like who is the burden of responsibility going to go on? The leader. And the burden of responsibility goes on the men. So they might get the big piece of chicken, as Chris Rock would say, but they also, typically buy the chicken. So, they have to go out and work on that. So I think it's just a more complex structure of than as simple as, man first, then the women. I don't think it's like that. Ali Wong has great comedy about that's against the feminist movement and stuff like that. Not saying I'm against the feminist movement, but her comedy's pretty good. Just about how being a housewife is tremendously luxurious because you don't have as much responsibility and stuff like that. Hello, Dylan. Nice to see you. So there was a question up here. Yeah. Can I give a quick backstory on the guy you had the conversation with recently with the TDS? How did that start and lead to that discussion? Has he contacted you since? Great question. His name is Brian. He was showing up in my comment section every single post, a lot. He would comment and then someone would say something. He'd interact with them back and forth. It was good for my algorithm, I suppose. But it was lots of back and forth, blah, 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 blah. And a lot of harsh critiques of me. I'm insincere. I shouldn't be around children. I'm unintelligent. All that kind of stuff, like personal attacks. So I do what I kind of do all the time when someone personally attacks me, which is I want to try and find common ground. And I want to show you that I'm a human and that I have good intention. If you say that I'm insincere, I'm like an Enneagram 4, the Enneagram people out there, which is I really hate being misunderstood. So even like internet trolls, I get bothered by it. So I reached out to him to come on an Instagram live, and he agreed. Not many do. That's why I'm still bringing up like clips from my conversation with the CRT educators, and I'm going to be showing clips of Brian and I talking, is because people who really think that I'm terrible and dangerous generally don't want to have a conversation with me. So when they do, it's like, all right, let's go. But that's how it came up. He hasn't. I think we emailed a little bit. I sent an email just saying like, thank you for doing it, and I hope you're going to do well. He does seem it. I'm not angry at him at all. I'm actually, and I don't mean this in a paternalizing way at all, but I am like sad for him. I don't know what his situation is, but I doubt that he has, comes home from work and has, his, 6 and 7 year old boy and girl, daughter and son just like run up into his arms. Like, I don't, a loving marriage and a good situation. Like, I think that it's clear that there's something really angry within him. And that doesn't make me happy. That doesn't make me want to dunk on him at all. It makes me sad in a genuine way. So I have no interest in making him feel worse about himself. I just do want to reveal the way he thinks as something that I think is not productive for society, essentially. Oh, thank you for, I was trying to display those 3 pillars. I really am. It's interesting that he labeled you as an addict when he seems to be addicted to social media and engaging. Yeah. And also like he asked if I was an addict. The reason I said yes is because I do understand that. I've been very blessed in my life to have like little instances of experiencing things that gave me like the gist of it. And I was addicted to cigarettes when I was a teenager. 16 through 18, I smoked like 3 packs a week. But it was like hard, I worked in a factory and over the summer, like would smoke cigarettes. Obviously many of us are addicted to sugar, and I got off of sugar and stuff like that. But I'm not like a 12-stepper or anything like that. But he's like, see, I told you, I could tell you were an addict. It's like, kind of. I think we're all addicts to some degree. But he did keep calling me a narcissist when I think it was very clear, if you know the definition of a narcissist and what that is, that is kind of like pot calling the kettle black. Oh, I already did that question. Let's see if I have any more. Okay. How can a school effectively develop a sustainability and climate science curriculum that comprehensively addresses both the challenges and solutions while remaining neutral and avoiding political bias? Wow, that's a question. That's a former student of mine too. So I do teach about climate change in my civics class. That's going to be on Paradox in the fall. There's a bunch of articles from Quillette that were really good. I had Matthew Burgess on my podcast, I met at the Heterodox Academy conference. What you need to do is recognize what is true and what is not about the climate issue. Okay, like to what level is, climate change happening? To what level is it measurable? To what level can we mitigate it? Versus what is just like rhetoric that's put out there for, Marxism, essentially. I think that you apply the same concepts that I do to everything. I think that you seek disconfirmation. I think that you actively attempt to challenge whatever narrative you're on. And I think you look for the best representatives of both sides. Joe Rogan did a good one. I think we had like a climate scientist and then another climate scientist or something like that. All right, take care, man. And he had them like, debate, or maybe it was back-to-back podcasts, 3 hours each. I think that's how you do it. That's how you find the truth. I think that climate change is definitely one of those, polarizing ones, but it's not more polarizing, I don't think, than like transgender issues. It's definitely not more polarizing than Israel and Middle East stuff. So you take the same approach with climate change as you do with everything else. For some people, it's like climate change, I don't even care. It doesn't matter to me, right? And some people like Middle East, I don't care, I'm in Detroit, right? But other people's like my family's in Israel, or my family's, Palestinian or something like that. And then what happens is the same thing that you've seen, which is your ideology gets the best of you and you become an unclear thinker. Yeah, that's a good point. We can't measure things that are that complex that accurately, which is why a lot of the models are wrong, when it comes to climate change. But there are elements of it that are very important to recognize and very true, but we have to get rid of the stuff that's false. I mean, it's my issue with like the critiques of Donald Trump. I think there's a lot of things to critique Donald Trump on, but when you throw in fake ones, then it all becomes fake news, and then we don't get any real critiques of Donald Trump, and that's a problem. We don't believe any of them, and I think that's what's happening with climate science too. People are almost like praying to the gods of nature and saying all this stuff. They're not using their rational mind, and then we're going to lose sight of the fact that we might have a very serious environmental issue upon us that we have to look at, and we have to weigh that out. You know, Bjorn Lundberg has a lot of stuff on that, but I'm going to cover climate change a bit because I think it's really important. I just think that the way it's done is just generally pretty terrible. All right, what do I think about the presidential debates being scheduled without going through the presidential debate commission? It's so strange, threatening democracy, right? 70% of the population doesn't want these two, and yet these are our two. And then they're going through this whole new way of setting up debate. It's just, we're so far from what the people of this country want. And we're just kind of going along with it because you can't vote for RFK because he's wacky about these issues or whatever he said about 5G, and he just doesn't have a chance to win. So all 70% of this population that can vote and doesn't want to vote for one of these two is just going to go, well, all 70% are going to go, well, if I vote for the third guy, then it's impossible. It's throwing away my vote. So I think that it's just, the whole thing is just really a mess. I think it's really a mess, and people are going to lean toward Donald Trump more because he's just less establishment than Biden is. So it's like, if this whole thing is a mess, the bureaucratic reality of our government, our federal government especially, is a mess, then I'm going to bring in someone who's going to be more likely to push back against it. Something along those lines. But that's what Biden said before. I mean, Trump said before. If you look at his campaign in 2015, 2016, he was like, I'm going to give term limits for people in Congress. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to lower the debt. He raised the debt. He didn't do term limits. I'm going to drain the swamp. And he brings in all these people who were deeply entrenched in the swamp. So maybe he won't do that and he learned his lesson. But track records matter, So I don't know. This presidential election is really bananas. I'll be on here a lot because I'm, a government teacher and stuff like that. But the whole thing's really, really wild. Thank you guys for, I think I have one more. Sorry. Let me see. What is this? What are your thoughts on faith, on religion as a shallow response to fill a spiritual void? Faith in religion, I guess. Shallow response. I don't think that religion is a shallow response. I think we do have a spiritual void. I think even atheist social scientists would agree with that. John Haidt says that. Even Peter Boghossian, who wrote a book How to Create Atheists, acknowledges that there is some sort of drive for a higher power or something like that. But I don't think religion or religious stories or Judeo-Christian belief or whatever it is shallow. I just was at Jordan Peterson's show, We Who Wrestle with God. I've seen him a bunch of times, and this was different. This wasn't life advice. Before it was 12 rules for life. What do I do when my wife wants to leave me? Or what do I do? How do I raise my kids? And he gives you practical advice. That's how he became well known. This was not that. This was the depth of Bible stories and how deep those stories are about the human experience. So I don't agree with the premise of this question that religion is shallow. I don't think that's true at all. Are they flawed? Perhaps. Are they difficult to understand or apply to your life? For sure. But I wouldn't say shallow. That I wouldn't agree with. I wouldn't say that that Bible stories in and of themselves are a shallow response to fill the spiritual void. I think it's probably the deepest response. The shallow response to fill the spiritual void is you look for something that's obviously wrong and you just pick the other side. Racism. Clearly wrong. We know that. So I'm an anti-racist. Hurting marginalized kids. Clearly wrong, so I'm going to fight for the children. That's shallow. That's shallow, because how that plays out is really where the rubber hits the road. And that's something that I don't think is the way to fill your spiritual void is with the shallowness. I think you need something really deep. And whether or not you subscribe to it, to say that religious stories are not deep is absurd. It's not just that Jonah was swallowed by a fish. Jordan spent like a half hour going over the Jonah story. Like, it's crazy deep. It's like a story of a meta truth, a truth about all truth, and the human experience. So I don't think that these things are shallow. I think what's shallow is be a good person. That's what you do. You be a good person. It's like, that's shallow. Like, what does that look like? Be a good person. How? How do I be a good person? Well, you're nice to people. Nice to all people. Nice to Nazis. Nice to people who horribly sexually abuse children. How nice? Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, that's shallow. And that's what I think you shouldn't fill your spiritual void with, is that kind of shallowness. You know, people are scared of death. Religion solved that for people who really believe. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. People are scared of death. That's like once you're conscious, you realize your consciousness of the totality of your life and the reality that you're going to die. So how do you overcome that fear? Because obviously every animal fears death. That's why it fights against it. So how do you overcome that? And I think that there has to be some sort of way. And I think that's what the passion story is like the conquering death is. You will have everlasting life is the narrative of that, because that's, you know, we look to the person who conquered death because that is the scariest thing. I think that makes sense. Is my Christianity more of a philosophy, or do you actually believe that Jesus rose from the dead? Good question. That's been evolving for a long time. I'll finish with this one. What I've come to realize, to answer your question, is I don't know anything about what's real or not, what's true or not. My reality has been thrown upside down so many times in my life for so many different reasons, that I've been humbled tremendously about understanding what is true or what is not. Virgin birth, that's impossible. Or rising from the dead, like, that's impossible. Yeah, I know. But if someone did it, that would be kind of a big deal, right? That would be kind of a big deal. Like, big enough to change the way our calendars work and become the number one operating system religion of the world. Like, that seems like a big deal. So personally, yeah, I do believe that miraculous event happened, and there's no historical data to say that it didn't. There's just our understanding of the physical world of that's impossible. Agreed. It's impossible to be raised from the dead by our definition. So if someone did that, that would be something that is metaphysical. That is something beyond the physical world, which is kind of the narrative about understanding the metaphysical and the spiritual world. So, kind of cool. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, so thank you guys so much. I really appreciate this. I'm gonna do these Instagram lives more. Maybe I'll put a donation button up there, but you don't have to pay me anything. I enjoy doing this. But if you're kids, if you have teenagers that want to become critical thinkers, get them in Paradox. I would love to be their teacher. I would love it. It's nothing I like doing more than teaching. That's why I'm doing this, just for fun. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Be strong and powerful before you can be kind. Be a monster before you can be good. Then you must earn salvation. You must earn to be loved. That's Jordan's Christianity, it seems. Yeah, I hear you. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'll put this on my feed maybe tomorrow. Thanks, guys.